I'm not gonna make you eat. I'm just gonna sit here for a while. Is that okay?
Why?
Because you've been alone in here for 7 days. That's long enough.
7 days. That was how long the alien had been in Detention Block C without eating anything that the facility had provided. Officer Mara Solís had reviewed the intake log twice before her shift started, the way she always did, because intake logs told you things that verbal briefings left out, the gaps between the official record and what had actually happened in those first hours when the subject arrived and the paperwork was being filed and nobody was paying careful attention to the details. The details in this case were: 1 alien juvenile, species unclassified, recovered from a derelict vessel in the outer corridor. No identification. No known language match in the database. No response to standard communication attempts. Estimated biological age uncertain. The body suggested youth, but the eyes, as the intake medic had noted in a brief aside that Mara had read 3 times, suggested something considerably older. 7 days without food. The medic's notes flagged it as a concern but not yet a crisis. The species' metabolic baseline was unknown, and there was a possibility that the intervals between feeding were simply longer than human norms. Mara thought that was probably true and also probably not the point. She had watched the footage from the previous 7 days before going to the block. 6 different officers, following protocol, sliding the tray through the lower slot in the cell door. The alien, she had started thinking of her as Vess, which was the closest approximation to the sound the alien had made once, on day 2, when the medic had asked for a name. Sat in the corner every time. She watched the tray. She did not touch it. It was not hunger strike behavior. Mara had seen hunger strike behavior. This was different. This was the behavior of something that had learned, somewhere in its history, that food from an unfamiliar source in an unfamiliar place was a specific category of danger. This was fear. Old fear. The kind that had been there long before this cell. Mara picked up the tray from the preparation station. Standard issue. 2 sections, warm protein in the orange section, greens in the other. She looked at it for a moment, and then she did something that was not in the protocol document. She got a second set of utensils. The cell door opened with the standard hydraulic sound. Mara came in instead of sliding the tray through the slot. She crossed to the middle of the floor, sat down cross-legged with the deliberate, unhurried movement of someone who had decided they were going to be on the floor for a while, and placed the tray between herself and the corner where Vess was sitting. Vess pressed further into the corner. Mara did not move toward her. She looked at the tray. She picked up her own utensils, took a portion from the orange section, and ate it. Slowly, without looking at Vess. The cell was very quiet. She took another portion, ate it, set the utensils down. She waited. "It doesn't taste like much," she said, to the tray rather than to Vess, because she had noticed on the footage that direct eye contact seemed to increase the withdrawal response. The orange stuff. It's protein compound. It's supposed to be nutritionally complete, but whoever designed nutritional completeness clearly never thought about flavor. Silence. "The green stuff is better," she said. "Slightly. It has a texture that's at least interesting." More silence. Then from the corner a sound. Not words, not anything the translation matrix would catch, but a sound that had the cadence of a question. Mara looked at the tray. Not at Vess. "I don't know if it's safe for you," she said honestly. "The medic thinks it's close enough to your metabolic profile to be nutritionally compatible, but I won't tell you it's certain. What I can tell you is that I just ate it and I'm fine, which is at least some evidence." Another sound. Different cadence. "My name is Mara," she said. Long pause. "Vess," came a sound from the corner. Or close enough to it that Mara counted it. She did not push. That was the thing she had decided before she walked in. She was not going to push. She was going to sit on the floor for as long as it took, and she was going to eat some of the tray herself, and she was going to talk about unremarkable things in a quiet voice, and she was going to wait. She talked about the facility's ventilation system, which was too loud on the east side and had been reported 14 times in the past year. She talked about the view from the observation deck, which was technically restricted but which several of the officers used anyway because it showed a particular star cluster that appeared, depending on the angle, to look like a running animal. She talked about the green food and its texture in more detail than the green food probably warranted. 40 minutes in, Vess moved. Not toward the tray. Just uncurled slightly from the tight self-protective configuration she had held for 40 minutes, pulling the silver thermal blanket around her shoulders instead of over her entire body, amber eyes moving from the wall to the tray to Mara's hands. Mara did not react to this. She kept talking. She was, at this point, describing the star cluster in some detail, and she kept her hands visible and still. At the 53-minute mark, Vess reached one thin gray-blue arm out from under the blanket and touched the edge of the tray with 2 fingers. Mara kept talking about the star cluster. Vess pulled the tray 1 inch closer to herself. Mara described the particular way the cluster looked at the 3rd hour of the night cycle, when the observation deck lights were lowest. Vess took a small portion of the green food. He ate slowly. Very slowly, the way beings eat when they are doing something that goes against a deep instinct and are overriding it with something else. Not certainty but decision. The decision to try. The decision that this specific situation might be different from the situations that had created the instinct. Mara talked about the star cluster until she ran out of things to say about it, and then she talked about the ventilation system again, and then she sat in comfortable silence for a while, which felt right. When the green section of the tray was finished, Vess pulled her arm back under the blanket and looked at Mara directly for the first time. Umber eyes. Ancient and young at the same time, the way the intake medic had noted. Mara, Vess said. Clearly this time. Testing it. Yes, Mara said. Come, Vess said, or the closest sound her language matrix would later classify as that word. Again.